Hey everybody, and welcome to the ACE Football Academy. Coach Hamilton here today with a very special guest. Real quick reminder that we are brought to you by the A.C.E Car Wash, locally owned and operated here in Richmond, Kentucky. Please make sure you go see them for all your car washing needs. If you remember a few weeks ago, Coach Dunham and I spoke about the relationship between high school and club soccer, and just kind of had that debate back and forth about, which is better. Better is not the right word, but we had a conversation about the benefits of each. Where is the club side of things better? Where is the school side of things better? And I am very honored to be joined by Asia Mape today on our podcast. She is the founder of I Love to Watch You Play.com. Asia, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm excited to be here and talk about this.
Yeah, so before we dive into our conversation, kind of tell our listeners, and I have really, since you and I connected on Twitter or X or whatever it's called nowadays, since you and I connected on there, I have really enjoyed looking at the I Love to Watch You Play website. There's lots of great stuff on there, but kind of just give us a little bit of your background and then how you got involved with, or how you, not got involved, but how you created I Love to Watch You Play.
Yeah, so, I was an athlete. I was a basketball player. Loved basketball, played all the time. I mean, this is a while back now, so we didn't probably have it in the exact same amount and stress and pressure kind of with kids feel today, but I loved it. It was like a great place for me to go and kind of get away from everything I was dealing with in my childhood. And I felt a lot of confidence from it, and it opened a lot of doors for me. And so I fell in love with basketball. I fell in love with sports. And ended up really doing so many different things in sports. I played in college for a little while, which led me to sports journalism. And I spent 20 years or so, working the sidelines of all different things from Olympics to NFL Super Bowls and NBA playoffs and hockey and you name it. I probably covered it for Fox or ESPN or NBC Sports. And had a great run at that. And eventually, when I started to have my own children, I just wanted to find something I could do still involved in sports that, I could travel less and be more present for my own kids. And around that time, a coworker of mine, she was an on-air person for NFL Network, said, let's start something for youth sports. And so we started I Love to Watch You Play together back in 2015. She has since moved on and is doing a lot of great things. And I kept the site because it's my baby, and I've grown up right along with it. I've learned as much about sports parenting, and probably a lot more about sports parenting in these last few years than I ever would have, traveling around covering youth sports or traveling around covering professional sports. And so it's through the website that I've grown. And so we've kind of grown along together, and it's been the greatest gift, not only to be able to help myself be a better sports parent, but I hear all the time from people that read the site or follow it on social media that it helps in some way. And so it's a great honor to be able to do something that's also helpful for people.
That is really, really awesome. So on the website, there are, of course, lots of articles. That's what I've enjoyed. But just kind of parenting, and really, I'm saying parenting, but also coaching as well. Coaches that can get on and really, as you mentioned, kind of dive into that and help guide the parenting of athletes, of youth athletes. So it is really, really cool. I have definitely enjoyed it. But Asa, let's dive into our conversation. So what happened a couple of weeks ago at the end of, I coach our local middle school team here as well on the club side of things. So I do both. And last season was, I coached middle school several years ago. I've done some high school coaching as well. But I came back this year to the middle school, and you kind of forget that, when you get locked into the club side of things, you kind of forget the passion and the joy that you get from high school sports. And we lost our final. We got beat in the finals. The girls did. And, it's just immediate tears. And so I sent out that tweet saying, there's just something about high school sports that makes it different, makes it, for lack of a better word, better. And that's not to take anything away from the club side of things, as we'll talk about, I'm sure. But there's just something about high school sports that brings out personalities and emotions and things that you don't get on the club side of things. You reached out and showed me your article, which I want to talk with you about a little bit. One of the very first things that you bring up that I hadn't even really thought about was the opportunity that school sports give athletes to build leadership within themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, it's been as I talk a lot about in that article. My daughter was lucky; she got to play. So she was in USA Soccer Development, who's not, and you're not allowed to play when she first started in high school when she was a freshman. But because we go to a private school and there were some different rules around that, she's been able to play all 4 years. And to watch her journey and her path, and not just as a soccer player and learning, a lot of different things about her skill and ways that she could, have an impact other than club, but really that sort of leadership piece has been one of the most exciting as a parent to watch. And I don't know if all clubs are like this, but our club is always in almost every team, and she's been with one club really through all of her soccer. But they didn't really have captains. There really wasn't much of a chance for leadership. And seeing that progression and watching her grasp it, and I say this all the time. Not everyone is. I think we grow up telling our kids, "You should be a leader. Go out there, be a leader. You've got to, why don't you volunteer to do that?" Right? It's not like natural to a lot of kids. It's also something you have to learn to do. It's not just like this thing you wake up one day and you're a leader. And so, I think one of the most valuable things about her high school experience was that she was relied on, because as you grow up in that high school system that we have, you start getting more and more responsibility. But also, when you're a senior, you can't be a captain until you're a senior. So she kind of had this nice area to grow and time to grow into it. And watching that development was just amazing. Really, really special to see how she kind of took the other players under her wing, how she, was, having off practice time group meetings with the girls to go and work on things, and just seeing that side of her that she never would have had that opportunity to grow in on her club team.
Absolutely. And like you said, and very similar, you mentioned the club out there in California, very similar here where we are, on the club side of things. My captains are, two different girls every game, or, three
Yeah.
different girls every
Nice.
game, or, and I just toss the captain's banner out. I'm like, hey, you're the captain today. And honestly, there's no real rhyme or reason to it outside of, hey, you haven't been captain in a while. Why don't you go be captain?
Yeah.
And and so it was real interesting. I have an interesting dynamic kind of with that, where I had about three girls that played club for me that were also on the middle school team. So I coached them there as well. So they got to see me, on two different ways. And they would always ask, why don't we have captains? Why don't you make captain? Because on the club side of things, very similar to what you said, they had captains meetings, and they, were in charge of making sure we had food after the school before the games and all that kind of stuff that on the club side you just don't get. And not that there's a right or wrong there, but it
Mhm.
just feels like the club side of thing um, pushes itself more toward the competition area,
Mhm.
where on the school side you have those moments to create leadership in players.
I totally agree. And service in the community and all different kinds of things. And, it really is. And you started out by saying something around this, but it's not really one versus the other, right? They both serve such great purposes, and, grow the player in really different ways, but both so valuable. Like, I couldn't sit here and say, you should do one or you should do the
Right.
other. But it also depends on your goals and what your player plans to do, if they want to try to play at the next level or not. I mean, it's really difficult to do that without embracing club in some way. Although it does happen. I think there was, an NWSL player who just signed for the most money ever, and she didn't play club soccer. But that's
Right.
like certainly a very unusual case, and not the norm. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you're right. That's one of the things that we've talked about is in that area of, that's one of the benefits of club. That's where you are going to get those looks, most of the looks from the recruiters and the colleges and things at the next level. Very rare, as you mentioned, do you see someone being recruited at a high school game. Just, and there's lots of reasons for that, but definitely one of the line that stuck out most to me in your article, again, we're talking with Asia Mape from I Love to Watch You Play.com. She has written an article about the benefits of high school sports for young athletes. And the line that just stuck with me, because I think we've always kind of been looking for that way to describe club sports versus high school sports. But the line you wrote was competition defines a club, camaraderie defines a high school team. And I think that is just so well said. And I would love to hear your expansion on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I started that article, and the reason I even wrote the article, or why it popped into my head, was, watching my daughter the last two, and we were a really good team that should have gone really far. There were a lot of high expectations, and she was the captain that year, and she was a senior, so there's a lot of emotion around it. But watching her cry, and like at least at the end of two games in high school, I don't think I had ever seen her cry in club. And it really, I found myself like, oh my God, what do I do? Do I go comfort her? Like, it was such an unusual, and I know that girls do cry in club. She has teammates. It's not that but for my daughter, that just showed me how meaningful it was to her. I mean, she sat there on the field sobbing. And I think it really kind of all came together for me, just how much this experience meant for her in so many different ways. And as I go into a lot in that article, I mean, you're playing for more than yourself, right? In club, the games kind of go on. So many games are sort of somewhat meaningless, really. It's all about kind of getting to that next level, and it loses a lot of what sports are supposed to be all about. Playing for each other, playing for a community, playing for the teachers that are coming to watch. And, it seems like the crowd is filled, and it's just such a different energy than that sort of quiet watching the club game, experience. And we really experienced that. And I think my daughter really experienced that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where in the 10 years that I have coached club, I don't think I've ever had a player cry after a game, because they were upset about the result of the
About the
game.
loss.
I mean, of course,
Exactly.
injuries and broken bones and things like that.
Yeah.
But you just don't see it, and I think everything you just said there is 100% accurate. Playing for something other than yourself, where you get that at the school because you're playing for the name on the front of your jersey. And I think that camaraderie part is so important because there are some. I'm just going to use my club team as an example where they all go to different schools, and so they see each other for a couple of nights at practice a week, and then they see each other on Saturdays, on game days, and so. But your teammates at the school level, you see them every day. You eat lunch with them every day.
Mhm.
You see them in the hall. You get that opportunity to connect on a more personal level, I guess.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I don't know if it's specific to our high school, but they they have them. Club is shut down. They're only in high school season, and our high school coach would do things like every team the night before a team or a game, they would have a team dinner. They would go and they would work sometimes with the middle school because we have a middle school connected with our school. They would get them together. It just seemed to be kind of to your point where it seemed to be that they could really sort of, they, like you said, they see each other at school and know each other on this whole other level. But then also just around the soccer, they really, made a point to build that community. And it was really, it's really cool. And, you have that, you can have that in club too, right? It's just different. I think in my experience, the club coaches and the club directors are trying often to be very aware that the kids have school, the kids have all these other things, and they're trying not to take a lot of that time. Where in high school it just felt like this is what we're doing, we're all in, and so they were more free to have these dinners, to have things that really kind of bonded our team together a lot more often than they had those sorts of things in clubs.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. And then the other thing that we kind of already alluded to that I found very, that I loved about the article was, we talk about the tears, we talk about the emotions and the pride that go into the school sports side of things. And we're talking soccer here, but I don't think that this is, is different in high school volleyball and club volleyball. I don't know. I don't do either of those things, but I would assume it is the same across all sports. But you know, I love the passion that you
Hmm.
see on in a school sport that you don't normally see on the club side of things.
Hmm.
You mentioned, which you're 100% correct. You mentioned the fans, the parents. The cheering, the stomping, the chanting at school games. You don't ever get that, even in the finals of a tournament on the club side of things. There are. I have sent multiple messages to my parents. Hey, you all need to cheer. Like I need to hear you. When you feel that moment where hey, our energy is dropped, or our play is becomes stagnant. One of the things parents can do in that moment is provide that, build that energy back up, and you just don't get it on the club side of things.
Yeah, I feel like when they're little, I had two daughters play club soccer, and when they're younger, there's a lot more of that energy and cheering and sort of like rah rah on the club side. When they get older, not so much. It's sort of like we're all seasoned vets at that point, and be careful what you're wishing for, Charlie, because I don't know. Sometimes that yelling can also be kind of a negative, but it is
Yeah.
interesting. You just sort of, it feels like business. You're there, especially as you get older. It's like, okay, we're taking care of business over here. You're checking boxes, playing time. How'd she do? Can she send something from that to the college? It just becomes sort of like a means to an end instead of a real sort of enjoyment of the moment.
Yes, I love that. It is a business because, as we talked earlier, most players, not most, but a lot of the players playing at club are doing it to get those looks for the next level, and it's kind of about more about hey, what's next versus
Hmm.
what's happening right
Right
now. It's like
now.
what's going to be next
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I think another thing that we can kind of talk about real quickly, and I would love to hear how you all do it here in Kentucky for the most part. I've gotten lucky being able to stay with one of my club teams for multiple seasons, but I know for the most part, it's kind of uh, 1 or 2 years with the coach, and then you move on to a new coach. And at the school level,
Hmm.
of course, you have coaching changes and things like that. But at the school level, most of the time, you're going to get that same coach over the course of 4 or 5 years, depending on when you start playing. And so I think that lends itself to building those relationships with the players.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And it's just like anything, right? It can be good or it can be bad, right? If you have a great coach, um, then that might be a, real positive, right? Because that coach values their players, sees things. If you have a bad coach, and when I posted that article, I got a lot of comments like that, like, high school, it's your high school, so you're kind of stuck. It's not like club where you have opportunities to change if you don't really love something happening there, whether it's the club team or the coach. But they've done studies of schools where when the teacher stays there's a word for it. I can't remember what it is, but where this teacher stays with the kids for multiple years, and they've just had
Looping.
so much success. Yes. And they've had so much success because it makes so much sense in a lot of ways, right? That they really get to know that child, their strengths, their weaknesses. They can help them come out of their shell. They can help them in so many different ways. But again, right, that's only really helpful if that's a good coach or a good teacher. Because the other nice thing, sometimes we look forward to a new coach, or I know other players on the team that were like great players, but for whatever reason, that coach really either wasn't able to bring it out of them or didn't see something special that they had. And so sometimes fresh eyes can really open up a whole new side of a player, or can bring out just the gold in a player that was really sort of at the bottom of the lineup. And so that there's valid reasons for both, but I think kind of to your point that it typically lends itself to a much more positive experience when you can be with one person for a few years.
Absolutely. And of course, we've both mentioned, and you mentioned, that there are absolute strengths of the club side of things. And I don't want people to think that we are bashing club, because club is extremely important. Club is very much needed for, a lot of these players. And none of this that we're saying isn't just school exclusive. I think you can get the relationships, you can get, the team dinners and things like that on the club side of things too. It's just not as usual for the most part. But Asia, I want to go back real quickly to your before I let you go, to your website. I love to watch you play.com. What are some? So you mentioned that is still active. You are still using that. What are some things that maybe we can look forward to in the future? Anything coming down the pipeline for you guys?
Yeah, really quick, Charlie, I did want to just say to add on to your point, club. I mean, some of my closest friends, I feel, if you stay with one club particularly, some of my closest friends right now are my club family. Like we still definitely consider ourselves
Absolutely.
a family, and like they came and would support my daughter's high school games, and I'll go to theirs. I'm going to go to one who's still in high school next week. It's like you can it 100% still have that, and that family feeling. And our group chat from my daughter graduated last year is still alive and occasionally active, where someone will share something. And I really want to stress that the differences are both needed, and both like have really positive sides to them. But there is definitely a difference between them. As for I love to watch you play, I'm really trying to get out there and talk more to I've found that getting in front of people, in front of schools, in front of teams, in front of leagues, that's a real big push I'm going to make this year. I think it's beneficial, and I really love it and enjoy it. And I love to learn and hear, what it is that parents are concerned about, that coaches are concerned about. And so that I can help create content that's helpful and useful. And so that's a big push this year, is really kind of getting out there more. And also, I'm going to start back up my podcast. So, maybe I can have you on one of these days, but really excited about some upcoming episodes on that. I'm hoping to get that started in within the next month or so. But otherwise, it's just creating, stuff that hopefully parents, coaches, admins can all find some use for in trying to do this a little bit better, right? I think like everyone has good intentions, or for the most part, everyone has good intentions, but there's a lot of information. There's a lot of different ways we bring ourselves to all of this stuff. And, sometimes just seeing different perspectives and seeing things from a different side, can be useful, because it's at the end of the day, it's all about the kid, the athlete, and making sure that they're getting the best experience possible.
Absolutely. Well, Asia, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for being on. I look forward to following along with I love to watch you play.com. So it was .com, correct? Yes. I'm just
Yes.
making sure
Yeah.
there. Uh,
Yeah.
So again, there's lots of great stuff on their website. I highly, highly encourage all of our listeners to go and check it out. Lots of good things on there, not only for parents, but for coaches and administrators as well. So make sure you head over and check that out. We have been chatting with Asia Mape of ILoveTheWatchYouPlay.com. She is highly, highly, as you can hear heard in her voice, highly intelligent. Very, very nice talking to you. So thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Charlie. I enjoyed it.
This has been the Ace Football Academy, and we'll catch you next time.